great stories for you. Glenn Beck's Jewish problem. That's got to be a little bit of a... Wait till you hear the details on that, okay, and what he's calling them now. Second of all, we destroy a village in Afghanistan. That's an unbelievable story. I'll share that with you in a little bit. And you don't want to miss the Chris Christie story. JR found the story. It's awesome, okay? All right, that's coming up a little bit later in this hour. So let's get started. Unfortunately, as usual, we get started with the troubles of President Obama. Now, the rest of the country and the rest of the media are talking about how Obama's surging and his poll numbers are getting better and better. Is it because of all the bills they passed in the lame duck session, START treaty, Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal, the tax cuts? Is it because of the Tucson shooting? They're all having this discussion. I'm going the opposite direction. I believe I'm a political leading, what did they say? A leading political indicator. Well, they don't say that. I made that term up. Anyway, so we'll see if I'm right or wrong. I think Obama's headed in a disastrous path. Now, that might mean that he loses in 2012, but that's not what I'm talking about. And he might easily win in 2012. I have no idea what's going to happen there, okay? I'm talking about at some point the country's going to wake up and go, oh my God, Obama led us more in a right-wing direction, and it turned into a disaster. Now, I am part of the minority on that. There's like 3 other people in the country who believe that. So it's incredibly possible we're wrong. We're going to see how it unfolds, and we'll see. But I'm going to make my case as usual today, and you'll see if you can see the same facts that I'm seeing, okay? So let's take a look. First, on Social Security. Obama has lost massive Democratic advantage on Social Security, according to the recent polls. A number of progressive pollsters got together. Now, they're progressive. They do Democratic messaging. That's important because they know what messages work and don't. Of course, at the same time, understand they're on one side, okay? Just to be clear on this. But they do polls that are not slanted. They do polls that see where the country is so that the Democratic Party can adjust, okay? Now, you might not like that or not like that, but they're giving you facts here, okay? So, Guy Molyneux, a partner at Hart Research Associates, says on Social Security, for the public, cutting benefits is the problem, not the solution. Now, I don't want to get back into that because it's obvious. I've given you a million polls on it. Roughly 85% of the country says that you should touch Social Security under no circumstances. Now, that's a giant number. In all my years of covering politics, I have never seen such overwhelming numbers. The public is unified. Democrat, Republican, Independent, don't touch Social Security. We paid into it. That's our money. We demand to have it back as promised by the government, okay? Now, of course, Barack Obama put together a deficit commission. They said, cut Social Security. And many of the other Democrats now talking about, well, raising the retirement age, not so bad. Well, guess what's happened? The American people heard that. And all of a sudden, the Democratic and Obama's numbers on Social Security plummeting. Let's look inside the numbers. Cylinder Lake Research Partners says that by a margin of 3 points, for the first time in as far back as anyone can remember, the Republicans now hold the advantage when asked the question, which party do you trust more with Social Security? That is a disaster. It's a disaster for the Democratic Party because that's one of the few things that's supposed to be their bedrock. It's a disaster for the country because the Republicans have no interest in Social Security. They can't wait to cut it. So not only have the Democrats lost their political advantage, but the country has been greatly misled. So at least on the Republican side, if they're concerned about the Democrats cutting Social Security, they're right. They have not been misled. They should be concerned. And they've caught on. Now, when you go inside the numbers a little bit more, the poll found confidence in Democrats on the issue dropping 14 points since January of 2007, accompanied by a 13-point increase for the Republicans. So, look, they're right about the Democrats. They should be concerned. 13-point increase for the Republicans. Are you crazy? They're the guys who tried to privatize it last time around. They've been trying to privatize it since the 1930s so Wall Street can gain hold of your pensions and your Social Security, and then later when they lose it and they make all the commissions and the fees, et cetera, they go, oh, what could we do? The money's gone, which is part of the trick they're playing now. It would only be accelerated. They've hated Social Security since the minute it was born. And you trust the Republican Party now? You must be crazy. All right, look, I don't mind if you don't trust either party. That makes sense. Now, when you get to Obama, the disaster widens. Public favors congressional Republicans over Obama on Social Security by an even larger 6-point margin. So the public trusts Obama less than even the Democratic Party in general. Obama's percentage rating on trust on Social Security is down to 26%. That's less than half of Bill Clinton's numbers. 26%! Disaster! This is the most important issue for Americans. All right? And by the way, it's even lower than George W. Bush's. He was at 37%, and he tried to privatize Social Security, which the American people hated. That was one of the few things that Bush could not get passed through Congress. Obama's ranking lower. Why? Because he keeps telling people, I'm going to cut it, I'm going to cut it, I'm going to raise the retirement age. I love the Republican idea of raising the retirement age. Except he doesn't even call it a Republican idea, so people think it's his idea. And maybe they're right. This is what I'm talking about when I say Obama, in some ways, could be worse than a Republican. Because he comes in as, oh, I'm Mr. Hope, I'm Mr. Change, I'm a Democrat, let's cut Social Security. What? Well, that's what the American people are saying right now. What? And it's not working out for him. All right, Stan Greenberg of Democracy Corps says, quote, there's no stomach for bringing Social Security in any way into this debate, and it fundamentally damages the progressives and Democrats if they bring Social Security into it. Celinda Lake says, quote, it's a great way to really solidify your losses. Here are the pollsters who have the information on what the American people think, screaming, you're going the wrong way. And Obama's like, what? Everybody in D.C. told me to cut Social Security. It's totally popular, right? Have you read a poll? Are you a politician? Unbelievable. To go back to Molyneux, he nails it. He says, look, when it comes to Social Security, opinion elites are from Mars, voters are from Venus. Okay? Everybody in Washington loves the idea of cutting Social Security. And by the way, why? Because they benefit from it. They don't want tax increases for the rich. They want to balance the budget off of your back, not their back. So Obama's going along with it, and it's part of his whole motif. I'm going to explain more on that in a second. And finally, Heather McGee, the director of DEMO's Washington office, another progressive polling organization, says when Democrats talk of cutting Social Security, it only serves to support the narrative that the government is to blame for the nation's economic problems. That's part and parcel of what's wrong with Obama. He buys into the Republican ideology and furthers it by saying to the American people, you're right, Social Security's the problem. Government's the problem. Well, that's what Republicans say, and that's what Obama says. All right, now, to give you another sense of how Obama serves the establishment and not mainstream Americans. When they were doing the stimulus bill, some people said, including Democrats in Congress, hey, you know what? If we're going to do energy programs, wind energy, otherwise, we should make sure that it's here in the United States because the whole point of the stimulus is to create jobs, right? To stimulate the economy, etc. When they suggested that the money should be spent only in the United States, and it's wind energy, I mean, it's either local or it's not. I know it's a too simplistic a way of looking at it, but there is some truth in that, right? So when they brought it up to Obama, Obama opposed the effort. He argued that targeting stimulus dollars at domestic investment would, quote, send a protectionist message. Okay, so what wound up happening? Well, ABC News has a report on it, and they say that between 54 to 79% of the money in the stimulus bill's key wind energy program has been spent overseas. Now, do you understand? Because some of you must be confused if you're not following this day in and day out. Thinking, well, why does Obama want to send the money abroad? I thought the whole point of the stimulus was for jobs here. What's his motivation? I'll tell you what his motivation is. Corporations make more money if they manufacture and spend money and hire overseas because they can hire people for cheaper. They can make products for cheaper. And what our government doesn't do is serve us. It serves corporations. And not American corporations, multinational corporations. And Obama takes his orders from them, as does everybody else in the establishment. So you know why they oppose this? Because the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, who then later spent over $70 million to defeat Democrats. But the Democrats still take their marching orders from them. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce said, no, not acceptable. it would be protectionist, and that the, quote, Buy America provisions were unacceptable. Why? Because the U.S. Chamber of Commerce does not represent U.S. companies or U.S. interests. They represent multinational corporations that are using the American taxpayers as their piggy banks. They're like, oh, stimulus money. Great. Give it to us, and we'll spend it in China. 54 to 79% of that program's money went overseas. Do you get it? We don't own and we don't run our own government. The corporations do, and Barack Obama helps them. I'm the bad guy for pointing it out. I'm bringing you facts, okay? You draw your own conclusions. You want another one? Paul Volcker, who was one of the few good guys. Paul Volcker, when I was growing up, was right-wing, solidly right-wing. He has stayed exactly where he is. Now he's considered significantly left-wing. Why? Political spectrum moved massively to the right. It was a big concession by Obama to be like, all right, I will bring in Paul Volcker, and he will every once in a while give me advice and counsel on economic matters. He was the Fed chief under Ronald Reagan. Volcker is not center-left. But now, since he's not massively pro-banks and corporations, because he's worried they're going to crash our economy, and he's right, he's considered, it's kind of questionable. So Volcker's had enough. He's leaving the administration. He's saying, all right, look, I tried. And I read you interviews with him after the financial reform passed. He was incredibly frustrated. He said, I did my best. They didn't do it. They didn't put in the safeguards that we need. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. So now he's saying, all right, no mas, and he's leaving. All right, people leave sometimes. That's not a big deal. What's the big deal? Who's going to replace him? Well, Obama has decided that they're going to have a whole new board. It's going to be the Council on Jobs and Competitiveness, and this is going to be his main outside advisor, as Volcker was. You know who he's replaced Volcker with, basically? Jeff Immelt, the head of GE. Okay. Now, to give you a sense, if you don't know what GE does, well, first of all, they're the fourth largest corporation. They do a lot of defense work. They do a lot of banking, okay? You might think GE banking, yes, they have a huge financial side. Immelt has expressed concern in the past about over-regulation from the Obama administration. He is quoted in the Financial Times as saying, business did not like the U.S. president, and the president did not like business. And he's taking pot shots at Obama before saying, oh, this guy, he's over-regulating us. He doesn't like business, etc. Now Obama has brought him in to be his top economic advisor. Who's going to tell him, oh, finance, you're way over-regulated. No. Bow your head. Do exactly as we tell you. By the way, has Obama hurt business? Are you kidding me? The stock market has tremendously rebounded. Now, I don't think that's a good indication of our economy, but if you're one of those major corporations that are in the stock market, you have to love Obama at the expense of the rest of the country. He has helped you enormously. The stock market has not risen this much since two presidents, Roosevelt and Coolidge. Not under Bush, not even under Clinton, etc. No one could have been more pro-business, but not good enough. And so what does Obama do to appease them? He brings in one of his biggest adversaries into as his top advisor to say, what more can I do for multinational corporations? I could be wrong. Let's see how it turns out. My guess is that's a disaster in the waiting. All right, now we get to financial reform. So what are they doing there? Now remember, they passed the bill, and then they say, okay, I know it seems weak, and it looks like the guy who wrote it has soft hands, but no, don't worry. We are passing a lot of this off to the regulators, and the regulators will push tough new laws once the law's in effect. Well, we are now at that stage, and of course the regulators are led by, and this was part of my criticism in the beginning, the Treasury Secretary, Tim Geithner. So they have issued new rules for the banks, and they are a comedy. Are you going to be surprised to find out that the banks have, in effect, no limits? They have gotten much larger since 2008, since the crash. The too big to fail banks have gotten bigger. And this says, the new regulations say they can get even bigger. So like even the biggest bank in the country can buy the 10th biggest bank and still be within limits. They're saying, no, the banks are not big enough. What a joke, what a joke, what a joke. So let me give you some details on this. By the way, the big four banks, which collectively hold about $7.7 trillion in assets, or just about half of the entire banking system. Gee, I wonder if they're too big to fail. Well, they originate and service roughly 3 out of every 5 home mortgages, 60% of the market, hold about 35% of all deposits, and control about 44% of all credit card purchases. Gee, I wonder if they're too big to fail. If one of those guys goes under, you think Tim Geithner or Obama is going to say, oh, good riddance, that's it, we're done with you? Oh, hell no. They're going to rescue them in a second, in a Wall Street second, and you know it. They're way too large for you because they'll drag down the whole economy with them. And Geithner says they should get larger. Absurd. To give you another sense of it, and this is the devastating number. Now, normal banks at this time, and I think the leverage has gotten out of control for all banks, only need to hold $1 for every $10 worth of investments that they do, whether it's lending out, whether it's derivatives, et cetera, et cetera. The big banks, since they're too big to fail and everybody knows the government's going to back them up, are only holding 50 cents for every $10. That means they are leveraged up to 20 to 1. Anybody who doesn't understand that for these banks to have 20 to 1 leverage is a disaster that is a guarantee, that is just waiting to happen, doesn't understand the first word about finance. 20 to 1. If they have a little problem with their investments, they're never going to be able to recover, let alone the giant problem they had before, let alone the giant problems I am positive they will have in the future. 20 to 1. And by the way, why are they even allowed to do 20 to 1? No regulation. Government encourages them to get bigger. And they say, in effect, everyone knows we're going to back you up. You can't go bankrupt. All you can do is make money in the short term. Take it home, build yachts, get your butlers and your maids and whatever you want to do, and then we'll back you up with taxpayer money. I could be wrong. Let's see what happens. Maybe I'm the crazy one, and 20 to 1 leverage is an awesome idea, and all of the economists in the world and all of the financial experts in the world are wrong. By the way, Simon Johnson is ripping his hair out, former head of the IMF, now at MIT. He's saying, why won't you listen to any of the top economists? Why won't you put any of them in positions of power? When they went to go do that Treasury report, they quoted a couple of guys whose paper hasn't even been published yet, because they're desperate to find anyone who'll agree with them who can say, oh yeah, the banks are fine. They should get even larger. And Simon Johnson's like, look at the top economists. Why won't you read their papers? Why won't you quote their papers? Simon, I've been telling you this for all this time. I told you when you were in the studio. It's not, and you know this, it's not because, golly gee willikers, they just happen to miss all of the evidence. It's because they're in bed with the banks. They want to help the banks get bigger and take all those obscene profits home. The Obama administration is not on our side. I'm the messenger, okay? You might hate the messenger, but the facts are incontrovertible. So a couple more real quick for you. Here's the conclusion of that report that I've been telling you about from Geithner. He says, there are both costs and benefits to limiting bank size. This study will not make recommendations regarding limits on the maximum size of banks, bank holding companies, and other large financial institutions. In other words, we're not going to do a damn thing. No limits on the banks. None. Enjoy. And then comically, the report talks about economies of scale. Let me take a moment out here just to explain it so you get a good sense of it. If you haven't gone to business school, a lot of you might know this anyway, of course, if you're on a business, etc. There's something called economies of scale, right? So let's say you invest in a factory and it only makes 100 widgets, right? Well, the cost per widget could be high. But if you make 1,000 widgets, you still have the same factory. You still have the same overhead, right? So the cost per widget goes down because it doesn't cost as much to produce because you still have the general cost of the factory. It's a very rough but simple explanation, right? So the economies of scale do exist if you get bigger in a lot of industries. I personally think it almost doesn't exist at all in banking. You can make a slight argument that there's a tiny economies of scale, but they don't have factories. They don't have that overhead. Largely speaking, it's not the same as actually building products. Their claim, Geithner's claim and the bank's claim, which are of course are identical, is that there are very good economies of scale. And that the fact that the banks are bigger is actually a good thing because it saves the economy overall money. If you know anything about finance, that is the world's largest joke. No, Geithner couldn't possibly be that stupid. No human being could be that stupid. No, it's him saying, I work for the banks. I don't work for the United States of America. Economies of scale for banks. What a joke. Especially at this level, when they're this gigantic. And then one more thing that Simon Johnson says is, quote, very strange. He says, for the information that they used on how banks that are large can be financially sound, they cut off the numbers in 2005. So it didn't include the collapse. So he's like, if you're looking to see if, large banks will lead to collapses, it's very strange that you would cut the numbers in 2005 when the collapse happened after 2005. Well, it's not strange at all, Simon. It's because they want to cook the books. They don't want you to know that big banks lead to collapses. Tim Geithner is by far the worst Treasury Secretary we have ever had. And he rivals Rumsfeld for the worst secretary in the cabinet in United States history. I could be wrong. We'll see how it turns out. We'll see if I don't know about leverage and 20-to-1 and that banks being larger is such a wonderful thing, and poor little me didn't understand it. That's why I keep telling you we're headed right towards an iceberg. I'm not telling you it's going to happen in 2 months. I don't even know if it's going to happen in 2 years. But it ain't going to be 20 years. It ain't going to be part of a normal cycle. It ain't going to be 10 years. 2 to 3 years, and we're going to hit a wall like you've never seen before. And then they're going to say, oh, nobody could have seen it coming. Who could have known that 20-to-1 leverage with the world's largest banks could cause trouble for the whole economy? Who could have known? What can we do? Let's bail them out. But it doesn't matter. At that point, we're not going to have any money left. I hate to do it to you, man. I'm here to bring you the facts. Read up on your own. You make your own decisions. Well, Anna, we were talking about the birds, right? The birds are dropping dead all over. You got Kentucky, Alabama, et cetera, right? Well, finally someone has fessed up to why some of the birds have died. In South Dakota, in Yankton, South Dakota, another couple hundred birds dropped dead. People are like, I wonder what happened. They're wondering about all this stuff. And the U.S. government comes in and goes, yeah, our bad. That was us. Okay.
Months, like almost a month later.
Okay, so now why? Why was South Dakota the U.S. government? It turns out they have a fairly secret program to poison birds. Okay, gee, I wonder if that could have resulted in the other birds' deaths. I'm sure it was fireworks. So let me explain. It's been around since the 1960s. It's called, the program's name is called Bye Bye Blackbird. Gee, I wonder why the birds are dying. Okay. Now, why do they want to poison the birds? That seems strange, right? It's not strange when you find out why. Because the farmers hate the birds. Okay. And why? This is great. 3 main reasons. The birds take a dump on their cows, and they don't like that. They take a dump on their equipment, and then they got to clean it all the time. They don't like that. But mainly because the birds eat their feed. And for example, European starlings, which they call nuisance birds, can eat up to 200 pounds of feed a day. So they're eating the feed, they're pooping all over the place. So the U.S. government not only sanctions poisoning them, but allows bird hitmen, I'm not kidding, to kill as many birds as they like. They don't have to document it, and they don't have to say how much, and they have a blanket immunity to kill these kinds of birds.
Oh, that's interesting. So, but what I'm wondering is, if they've been doing these experiments since the 60s, why is it that all these birds are dying today?
Now, the thing is, birds die all the time, right? And in fact, there's a stunning number in here. About 5 billion birds die every year according in the U.S., okay? Across the U.S. Now, that's a huge, huge number. Now, but they die one at a time. There's a lot of birds, of course, right? And when they start dying in flocks, now that happens sometimes too, but they usually die near the trees because that's where they've been poisoned, right? Purposely, by us, right? Here they were saying, well, they're not by the trees, they're flying and then dying later, right? In the other cases. South Dakota, they say, okay, that's us, right? The others, we're not sure if it was us, we don't know what happened, etc. My theory on that is, yeah, maybe there was a genetic mutation, maybe it's a different kind of bird, or maybe it's having a different effect on them. Maybe you switched up the poison a little bit, and so they don't die immediately by their nest. They die a little later. Or it changes something in their brain so they can't navigate. That's why they keep crashing into trucks, etc. The poison affects them in a slightly different way. That's only 1,000,000 times more rational than saying fireworks killed thousands of birds. or they all decide to run into trucks at the same time.
There's something fishy going on, Cenk. Like, I'm interested in this article. I think it's interesting that they're coming forward and they're saying, look, it was our fault. It was like, everybody calm down, right? Why did it take so long? Why did these firework theories come out before the truth came out? You see, they took a little too long to respond. All of a sudden, it's like, oh yeah, it was us. It's totally okay. We kill birds all the time. Everybody calm down.
No.
And then there's also this whole phenomenon with fish dying all over the place, right?
No, the whole thing is fishy. By the way,
literally.
Schwang, wang, wang. Okay. No, and by the way, they're only saying we only did South Dakota. We didn't do any of the others, right? Why is it fishy? And why didn't they come out with it earlier? It's a secret program to kill birds. It's called Bye Bye Blackbird. Okay, I mean, can it be any clearer?
Right.
So look, some of the birds might have died for other reasons, not connected to Bye Bye Blackbird. It might be not pesticides or whatever it might be, and not every case is going to be explained by this. But all of a sudden, do you sense that maybe the purposeful poisoning of birds across the country might have something to do with it? Or that it's a more logical explanation than all these birds committing mass suicide or all running into fireworks at the same time? I would say that's at least a little more logical. Last thing, Anna, you're right. It's amazing. They're like, oh yeah, it's not a big deal, but since the 1960s, we've secretly been killing millions of birds. Called Bye Bye Blackbird. And why? Of course, to help people make money. Because the farmers wanted to make more money, the birds were a pain in their ass, we killed them all. And then to follow up on that, JR, whenever we do these stories now, I think of you, and I think, Michael Vick went to jail. We kill millions of birds, and maybe that's fine, and maybe it makes sense, but we as a government kill millions of birds every single year. Nobody goes to jail over it. Michael Vick killed a couple of dogs in a terrible way. I never agreed with it. I say that every time. He went to jail over it. There's a little problem with logic here. I've swung totally to your side, JR. You did it again. You did it again, man. And you know what you can say to folks now? Okay, this is going to take a little while. And play along with your iPhone app. You can tell everybody.
To all the non-believers. How did that? To all the non-believers. Especially you, Tom Jackson.
I told you Michael Vick shouldn't have gone to jail. All right. What's next?
All right. Yesterday we did the story about a woman in Pennsylvania who fell into a mall fountain because she was texting and wasn't watching where she was going. Well, that was a fun video. We had a good time. But now we're starting to learn more and more about the woman, Kathy A. Cruz Marrero. Okay. And we find that she had a shady criminal past. Okay. So she actually worked at the mall. And back in 2007, she was accused of basically stealing her coworker's credit card and using it to make $5,000 worth of purchases at Zales Jewelry and Target.
Shady.
Shady. She was also involved in a hit and run back in 2009. Which is interesting because she was driving with a learner's permit. She didn't have her license yet. She claims that she panicked after she ran a stop sign, hit a car, and then that car hit 3 other parked cars. And she didn't know what to do, so she left.
It is a shame! A shame!
So she's getting into trouble all over the place. She's looking at house arrest for 6 months because of the credit card fraud and basically that case. I don't know what happened after the hit and run, but we have a video that JR found that I can't wait to watch.
But can I just say, there's also 4 other theft charges against her. No, Clown of the Earth is Kathy A. Clown Marrero.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shoplifting, retail theft.
Oh, come on, right? And now she's suing the mall because her clown ass fell into the fountain. Okay, but she has an explanation. Let's go to the video.
A friend of mine from church, she texted me, and I just decided to text her back. I thought I had a long distance. I didn't. My boot hit the edge of the fountain, and I fell over. I couldn't see anything that I could grab, so I just went forward. The next thing I know, I'm just seeing pennies and coins in front of my face.
I love the pennies and coins in front of her face. I love that.
I'm surprised she didn't take them.
She's like pennies and coins for the win. And then my second favorite part is, it's okay, because she was texting somebody at church.
Right.
So
I love
on.
how she added that.
She's so holy. You know. Do you know that the security guard who filmed that got fired.
He got fired, yes. The head of security at that Pennsylvania mall, I don't know if he found out for sure which security guard it was, but I know a security guard did get fired for supposedly or allegedly leaking that video online. And you know what? All of this new development made me realize something. Yesterday we were talking about how she shouldn't have gone to the news and talked about the video because no one could determine that it was her from that, that grainy video, right?
Right.
Why
Yep.
is she coming out and revealing her identity if she's so mortified and embarrassed? It's because she wants money now.
Oh, of course!
No, but
of course!
it had nothing to do about getting revenge on the people who embarrassed her. It's all about money, and she probably wants to get money to make up for all the money that she's losing in all of these court battles.
Obviously, I knew that from the first second. I mean, come on. Look, you're telling me, why would
In
you
the beginning-
sue the mall? Are you
No, I
freaking
know.
crazy?
In the
She's a
beginning-
scam artist. She took somebody at work, her friend at work, trusted her with her credit
I know,
cards.
I know.
And she robbed her blind.
Cenk, we did not know that yesterday.
Okay, I know.
Yesterday she came out in the news and she sounded like she was about to cry. She was mortified and embarrassed. So part of me kind of believed that she did feel embarrassed and mortified. She felt like the world was laughing at her and she wanted to get revenge. And of course she's also looking for a little money. But now I realize it's only for the money. She wasn't embarrassed, has nothing to do with it.
No, she probably thought that it was a score. Like the minute that she saw it, oh my God, 1.5 million on YouTube, I'll pretend to be embarrassed, and then I'll say I was texting somebody at church, and we'll make money. It's a good way, because for her, before she had to rob people individually, this gives her a chance to rob the whole mall. You see what I'm saying? Look at how some of these are alleged. You make up your own mind. Can you tell if I've made up my mind?
A lot of this,
Not buying it.
a lot of this isn't alleged, right? Especially when it comes to past things that she's done. When it comes to her coworker situation, she was charged with those crimes. When it comes to the hit and run, she admit to it. She says that she panicked and she didn't know what to do. So she's guilty of a ton of shady things in the past. So, and it's interesting because the attorney is like, well, this current case has nothing to do with her criminal past.
Oh no, of
So
course
let's
not.
ignore that.
Yeah, let's completely ignore it. Should she get any money from the mall?
Hell no!
And the security guard, let him go. Let him go. Bring him back. He did all of us a favor. And by outing herself, she did us a favor. Watch out for her. Don't lend her any money.
And this is what happens when you get greedy, okay? Nobody knew who you were before. Now everyone not only knows you and laughs at you after falling into a fountain while texting, now everyone knows all your dirty business, okay?
Right.
We know what you did in the past. We know your criminal record. It is a shame. A shame.
It is a shame! A shame! The gentleman will sit!
In the fountain.
The gentleman is correct in sitting!
In the fountain. All right, what's next?
All right, 2 police officers in England have been accused of sleeping with women who are eco-activists. So they're environmentalists who put together these protests that tend to get violent, right? So police officers are not supposed to go undercover and sleep with their targets, but 4 police
Really?
officers have. In fact, one of them went as far as getting married and having children, okay? But I gotta clarify this. So what happened is this one police officer pretends to be one of the environmentalists. He infiltrates the group, right? And he falls in love with the 28-year-old activist. And they develop this relationship. They're having sex, and then all of a sudden he disappears. And then he comes back and says, look, I got to be straight with you. I'm really a cop. And he forces her to change her name and her identity so he won't get caught by his bosses. And then later on they divorce, and the woman outs him.
Right. Now, I got to say, these eco-activists in the UK, they must be seductresses or some sort of hot. I don't know. But they're proving irresistible. 3 out of the 4 spies that go in wind up hooking up with the eco-activists. They're like, oh, we're here to spy on them. These people are dangerous. Damn, she's hot. Hey, what's happening? How you doing? Okay, next thing you know, they're all up in the eco-activist business. Okay. And by the way, why are they spying on the eco-activists in the first place?
No, I love that question. They claim that they're doing it because they put together these protests that get really violent, right? And they just want to make sure that they're not doing anything illegal and they're not trying to incite violence, yada, 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 whatever. It's just crazy to know that they have not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 police officers infiltrating these activists in their groups.
Infiltrating, indeed. Okay, and look, they use the excuse that some radical environmentalists like sometimes burn up cars, etc., which of course they should investigate. That's a crime, etc., right? But of course, the great majority of them do no such thing, but they do something else that they don't like in Great Britain. They block up traffic a lot of times. That's one of their forms of protest. When you block up traffic, you're one, annoying some of the people, especially the powerful people in London whose traffic is blocked. Second of all, you're, for a little while, slowing down commerce, and we can't have it. It's about the money, Lebowski. That's what this is about.
Yeah, more important than commerce is traffic.
Okay, all of a sudden you lost Anna.
All of
So all of a sudden she's like, infiltrate away. You know what I'm saying?
Do what you need to do.
Do what you need to
No,
do.
I'm kidding. But yeah, they're having sex.
Sex? That put me in trouble. Well, it did put him in trouble. And the head of police says it is, the chief constable says that it is grossly unprofessional, I do declare. Yeah, I would say so. Going to schlup, I went with schlup. The girls that you're supposed to be, covering, yes, unprofessional.
Can I ask a naive question?
I love them, yes.
Okay, so I always thought that it was standard operating procedure to sleep with your targets if you're a spy.
Where'd you get that from? The Bond movies? Well, I don't know. Maybe. James Bond always sleeps with the women. That was standard operating procedure.
No, I always thought that if you're a spy, you have to do what you need to do to get the information.
No, not in the real world. In the real world, that's terrible violation of ethics. Yes.
Are you thinking about Heather Graham and Austin Powers when she slept with Fat Bastard? Because she had to do what she had to do. That's what she said in the movie.
I love Anna's things that spies operate like James Bond and Austin Powers. Well, apparently they do. Apparently you were right.
See?
See?
We just don't know about it. Okay.
Yeah,
we
well-
think people are ethical, but we know what they're really doing.
Oh, come on. You're going to say
Undercover.
Yeah. Undercover.
Oh God, you're so rubbing off on me. What was that?
All right, cheesy joke central. All right, anyway, no, of course, you send in a bunch of horny young cop guys into a bunch of loose tree-hugging eco-activist women. What are you going to get? You're going to get tree and cop hugging. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm kidding. Sometimes environmentalists get mad at me. We're not all hippies. I know you're the good guys. Just calm down. We're playing, all right?